Hi, how lovely to be here. I want to start with a little anecdote. Like Anne stated, I started my career as an industrial design engineer, and actually did that in the States. I started, my first job was at General Electric, which was awesome, great company, and I came into the company with a whole lot of energy and a whole lot of ideas on what should be done and what I can do and how I can actually come up with really cool designs. So that's what I did. Started drawing away, sketching away, and showing my boss the designs. And then he said, "Cool, Joost, that looks beautiful, but what problem are you solving?" I said, "Ooh, do I need that?" So I thought, okay, cool, back to the drawing board. Actually, let's take some little time and figure out what problem I'm actually solving, set it up, and then there you go. Actually, the solutions look different. So I was really proud of my results. Went back to my boss, and he said, "Awesome, Joost, great step. But are your customers and your users aware of this problem?" I thought, oh, damn it. Screw those users, screw the markets, right? I've got great ideas. I want to bring them to the world. But he was right. Like I actually realized that there's very little to sell if nobody knows that they need to buy it. But I also haven't really changed. I am still actually very much in designing solutions for problems that are not very well known. And that's, I think, part of why I'm here, to actually sell a problem, to raise awareness around some of the issues that I believe we are faced with. Because we know something about self-organization and we use that, but I care deeply about another problem, and I'm going to try to outline that here today. But I've got a disclaimer, and that is that I'm scared. It's quite daunting coming up here in front of a couple hundred people with a message that's new. Actually, it's quite daunting to step up to a whole bunch of people regardless of what you're saying. I've got my ways to kind of make it look like I'm confident, but I'm not. I'm not confident. I'm quite scared. I've got all these ideas when I step up here in front of you guys with what you want and what you can expect from me, and I want to please you. I want to tell a cool story. I want to motivate you. I want to take you along with me on the journey. Yet, in my mind, there's all these voices saying, "You don't really know, Joost." They'll see it, and that's a stretch. I'm in a stretch. I'm in a stretch between what I want to achieve, what I think is expected of me, and my reality that comes with some insecurities. Now sharing that actually eases me a little bit, but there's a point to this, that I think all of us carry this stretch with us, and we're in it constantly. We step through this world with all these expectations of what the world wants of us, and specifically when we step through the front doors of our office, we step in there with an idea of what is expected of us. Yet, the first time we step through those doors, there's no way we're going to be able to deliver that. And it's that stretch that I really think needs to be identified, and needs to be a way to address that and to actually bring that to the work floor. And that has everything to do with being able to showing up vulnerable. And it has everything to do with creating safety in our work environments so that we can show up vulnerable. And that's a lead-in to my last point. This is my agenda for today. I want to tackle a couple of items that I believe are massive design challenges for designing the future of work. And there are these four that I really, really passionate about. One is purpose. That's really the starting point. Why do we work at all? Why do we organize? Because we've seen really cool tools to organize better, but why do we organize in the first place? What are we trying to achieve? Take a moment to look at that, and I'll get to these points in a second. And then there's power, and we heard a little bit about it. So how is power distributed? How can we make sure that power is used to achieve purpose, rather than used to achieve whatever management wants, or for the next raise or the next promotion? How can we really deal with power properly? I want to take a moment to look at that. And then there's culture. How do we interact? How can we create that culture to create safety so we can be vulnerable? So I really think that safety item is part of culture, but I separate them out because I think it's so important to have a moment and stand still and look at safety. Now what I want to do is for each of these design challenges is not so much come with solutions. I don't think we quite have the time for that. And if I've learned anything, if you step in front of an audience with mostly designers with solutions, they'll walk away. So here I am selling my problems. And I'll do that one by one, and I'll do that mostly by outlining some symptoms that I recognize with these problems, and hopefully you'll recognize them too. And hopefully they will trigger something. They will start a dialogue around, okay, how can we actually solve this? Because it is alive in our environments and in our work environments. Question. Do you like your job? Let's do a show of hands. I like my job. Awesome. Quite a few hands. And that's often the case with designers. There's a lot of intrinsic motivation to do that kind of work. But next question. Why? Is there anybody willing to share why you like your job? Or actually, if you're really daring, why you not like your job? Anybody? Yep?
Well, I have my own firm, and I'm an interior designer, and my big thing to start my own firm was to make sure that we had a balanced work-life balance. So it wasn't we weren't working till 12 a.m. or 10 p.m. like typical designers. We really wanted to make sure that we leave at 5 or 6 or have a nice, have fun time together.
Nice.
And just making sure that's pushing that culture forward.
Nice, good, healthy culture. Cool, nice. Any other ideas? Why you like your job? Yep. Trust and autonomy. Nice. Well, when I ask this question, there's often there's these categories of answers, generally speaking, and mostly you probably feel a little bit of both in your answer. There's probably parts of your job, of your work that you like. There's parts of your job that you don't like. Start with the negatives. Most of the answers you get when you talk about why you do not like your job, it's power and politics. You're being limited by the amount of power you have or by the amount of power somebody else has over you. Poor culture happens a lot. Like you're not engaged with your colleagues. And then there's bureaucracy, like the paper trail. Really annoying, right? Gets in the way. On the other side, there's, throwing it away as well, leaving it there, not the first one. There's skills. Most people just, when they like their job, they really enjoy what they do. I love designing. I love sketching, cool, awesome. Or you love coding, awesome, great thing to like. And there's great culture. You love your colleagues. It's like a family, you get together. And then there's impact and purpose. Now that's actually an answer you don't often hear. I love the impact that our company creates in the greater context of our societies. That's not often why people like their jobs. Maybe there's an element of that. But I really want to focus on that. How can we actually create a state or create an environment in which we figure out what it is that we most deeply care for and then spend our working life creating that, so that we can really follow our intrinsic motivation in building the companies and the world that we really want to create. Now, and there's an interesting thing here. This can be referred to as a force field. So in a force field, you can look at the things that work really, really well and try to promote that. What research shows, it's actually a lot easier to eliminate restraining forces. So eliminate the stuff that's not going well. So again, I'm trying to sell some problems to you guys. So here goes. One second, I'll take a sip of water first. Tricky with one hand. So purpose, right? Design problem number one. Why does the organization exist in the first place? Why do we come together? Like, organizations are awesome tools in our societies. They are capable of achieving the biggest impact possible. Yet we hardly ever know why they exist. The best you might get from an organization on purpose is some statement that ends up being a little bit of a marketing blurb. And it comes often with a really good intent, but it doesn't make that purpose actionable. So, 1 sec, let me get this one back. This is to your statistic earlier. What's a symptom around purpose not really being defined properly? And that's what you see here. There's research that shows, that's exactly what you showed before, is that about more than 60% of us is disengaged, to actively disengaged and dissatisfied in your job. Now we're spending most of our awake life in our jobs, yet we're disengaged. And I think that has everything to do with the fact that we don't get to express our intrinsic motivation in our work. Why do we accept that? Why is that good enough? I don't think that's good enough. Let's change that. So if you recognize that, if you figure out that you don't get to express your personal values in your job, there's an issue. There's an issue to be solved. And what I really want to stimulate is a discussion around that and some awareness around that. So ask yourself those questions. What are my personal values? How do I get to express those in my work? So that I can be engaged rather than disengaged. So disengagement is really a good indicator, a symptom that something is wrong. And there's only one way to assess that, right? If you're disengaged, you need purpose in your organization to assess whether or not your values align with that organizational purpose. So that's another really important element of defining purpose of your organization. Getting ahead of myself a little bit. This is my overview of my life, of my contributions to the different purposes I care for. And see how that for me is beyond my work. So purpose for me, work is just one purpose to contribute to. So what I would love for all of us to do is to figure out what are my core values? What do I really, really care for? And do I get to express them? And just make a map of your life, of the different purposes that you contribute to, and figure out if that's sufficient. Are you expressing everything you care for? Yes? Awesome. Keep doing that. No? Change something. And changing something can be many things, right? You can sit down with your company and try to figure out, hey, what is our purpose? Can we alter that so that it's actually reflective of what we care for? Or you can leave the company, or you can change the slider and show up as a purpose agent and work in multiple different organizations so that you can express the full multitude of all your values over different organizations. So, but you need a map, you need a way to reflect that. So create something for yourself that you can constantly, maybe on a monthly basis, get back to figure out, are these still my values? And what's the full map of all my purposes that I contribute to? Yes, keep doing that. No, change it. Now the second real big design challenge is around power, and this is actually where most of my work lies, to actually change the power dynamics in organizations, because they're really ingrained in our organizations, and they often have very little to do with servicing purpose and everything to do with personal needs. In our structures, in our organizational structures, there's management hierarchies where power is all the way at the top of the organization for most big decisions. But that doesn't necessarily mean that purpose is served best. So in order for purpose really to work, purpose needs to be the boss. No person transcends that. Now that's a real tricky challenge. That really requires a different operating system of our organizations. And maybe some of you have heard of Holacracy. Holacracy is one way of doing that. There's sociocracy, there's a bunch of other tools to do that. But they all serve that one goal of making sure to clearly identify what's the purpose of the organization and how can we make sure that all the power we hold within this organization serves purpose rather than people. And I like this slide a lot because it's an analogy for self-organization. And self-organization, probably most of you know something about it, heard about it. But to me, it's just a tool. A really awesome tool, but just a tool to serve purpose. You need self-organization to actually drive a purpose-driven organization. Like these boats, they all represent self-organizing teams, or maybe self-organizing role, or autonomous teams. And they can just figure out for themselves how they organize, right? But if there is no way to bind all these boats together, They're going to just take off on a left course or a right course, do whatever they want. Then it's the purpose of these boats is by the people, for the people. And that's not what our companies do. They need to achieve something. And that's that point on the horizon. Now, self-organization really works really, really well in our conventional organizations as well. They actually, the cool thing is self-organization can help our conventional organizations do a better job at what they do. And that's often where the discussion stops. But again, why do we want to do a better job? One little thing I forgot about the purpose side of things, I actually think that every organization is already purpose-driven. It's just explicit or implicit. And the implicit purpose for almost all organizations here is maximizing shareholder profit by doing X, something along those lines. And maybe there's some patches that are social and are inclusive and are beautiful, but they're not necessarily the purpose of the organization. Because often when they collide, these two things, when they oppose each other, profit is chosen over the marketing blurb of our purpose. So we really need a radical shift of power in order for purpose really to be the boss. Hard, but awesome. Little symptom of politics, of power being an issue, and that's politics showing up. Like, I like this little slide. Like the official power structure is the black lines, right? Now, when's the last time you opened your drawer, got your org chart out, or your job description to figure out what you were going to do that day? Exactly. But you still know what to do. So that's because we all kind of know what needs to be done, and we know where to go, because there's all these interpersonal relationships going on within your organization. Awesome. A quote of my colleague, he says, conventional organizations work in spite of their official structure, rather because of it. So in a conventional organization, politics is really needed and urgently needed to get anything done because the official structure doesn't work. But if purpose is the boss, it's going to be in the way. And we'll get to that in a tick. Another interesting symptom, and I didn't want to leave it out because I think everybody probably recognized it, is endless meetings. Now, why is that a symptom of power struggles? It's just unclear who holds the authority. Or sometimes they go really fast and you walk out really frustrated because Joe with his big mouth took all the shots again. Probably also kind of recognizable. So then it's everything that Joe says gets done, purpose is not the boss. But again, power is a problem here. It's not properly distributed. I'm skipping over some interesting points here, and maybe we can get to that in the Q&A, because I can keep going if I want to, but I want to get to the culture and safety side as well, and how important these elements are, because my work mostly lies in setting purpose and distributing power, but you cannot do that properly without addressing culture and safety. So my statement around showing up vulnerable requires a really healthy and thriving culture. Yet, you need to avoid that culture from playing a role in operational decision-making in pursuit of purpose. And I'm going to jump to this slide because there's a really interesting paradox going on. So I say, I want to have organizations work for us rather than us work for organizations. That's really like the short way I can put it. That's what I want. I want organizations to work for us rather than us working for organizations. That's what I want to get to. Deeply personal, deeply humane. Yet, when we get into organizational space, and I get to these spaces in a second, purpose is the boss. And I cannot hijack it with my personal needs anymore. Now, these almost seem opposite from each other. And they seem to be a paradox, but they're not. And I'll get to that maybe in a tick. These spaces, What you have on the left is the personal space. So that's, no, I'll backtrack for a second. Why is this important? In our organizations, we need to be able to ask, who cares? If there's an issue, you should always ask yourself, who cares? Does the organization care? Or do I care? That question gets never asked. If I care, the organization is going to be morphed in a way to deal with it. Now, they're both really important, but we need to figure out when to act upon it and how to act upon it, based on the answer of that question, who cares? And this matrix is really, really useful here. Because if you ask yourself that question, who cares, you can figure out by looking at this, hey, do I care about it? You're in individual space, me by myself, just showing up with my values. Do I care about it? Awesome. Great, deal with it. And maybe the organization cares about it. Do I fill some roles in the organization for which it's important to deal with the issue at hand? If so, bring it into the organization. You can solve it there. But if the organization doesn't care, if there's no roles or purpose of the organization doesn't care about the issues that you feel, do not bring it into the organization. This is the trickiest thing around purpose-driven work, and many people experience this as deeply inhumane at the start. Because all of a sudden there's no space. Somebody cares deeply about something, and there's no space in the organization to deal with it, because the organization doesn't care. And that's where culture comes in. Because then we say, okay, Joost, we see that you're so passionate about this, but the organization doesn't care. How outside of this organization, in tribe space, where we meet from person to person, can I support you so that we can figure out what you need as a person? This vocabulary is really, really important, because what we do over and over again is mix the two. We mix what organizations need with what we personally need. And we don't distinguish. So whatever you feel anything, ask yourself the question, does the organization care or do I care? Sorry, one sec. Now, how am I doing on time? Yeah, cool. Sorry, that was not a good sip of water there. I'll get there. Let's continue. Maybe I got ahead of myself a little bit there, but this is really, I guess, what I started with, right? Safety. What is keeping you from expressing what you actually need, what you really, really need? So again, when you step into that front door of your office, you step in there, but you leave so much behind. And there's so much that you don't say. There's so much implicit expectation from each other and that you have over others. Why are you not sharing that? Why do you feel you cannot show up vulnerable at your work? Why can you not say, I really don't know? Or I really don't care? Or I can't do this, or I don't like to do this. And that's all because we walk in with expectations of what it is like to be in a work environment. I need to perform, I need to be good at it, I need to do it instantly, and I need to do it fast. And showing up and saying, I'm tired, and I can't do it today. That's kind of not done. And I want to live in a world where I can do that. Where I can step into this environment and say, I can't do this, I don't know. Can you help me figure it out? And safety is such a base principle that we need for that to happen. So those 4 steps, right, from purpose, power, culture, and safety. The order is interesting, because I deeply believe this is almost a starting point, but you can't change anything if you don't change the power dynamics. Because yes, you can show up in your organization saying, I don't know how to do this, I can't do this. But if the power dynamics are not changed, I don't think it's almost possible to create that level of safety. because that you don't experience that safety, probably because somebody holds power over you. Probably because you fear that you might not get your bonus. You fear that you might be fired. You fear that you won't get your raise. Or maybe just the appraisal. Like all these things play into not feeling safe enough to express what you need. And that has to do with power. So the cool thing, if you start with safety, helps a lot. If you change the culture, helps a lot. But if you really want to thrive, you have to change power so that it serves purpose. And then changing culture and creating safety, geez, you're going to soar. A symptom, and you addressed it, about being busy. So again, if you recognize that, if you are busy, or you see colleagues that are busy, that's a symptom of not having enough safety. Because you do not experience the safety to say, I don't want to be busy. I want to go home. Because I have yet to meet somebody that enjoys being busy for a prolonged period of time. Fine to do a project, right? Not a problem. We can all work a little bit longer. But if you're busy continuously and you can't address it, it has everything to do with safety and power. So if you know this symptom, start a discussion about it. And if you can't do it with your boss, do it with your peers. Guys, I'm busy, but I don't dare to express it. How are you guys feeling about it? How can we do this together? How can we figure out to create the safety to start addressing these issues that really, really matter? Getting to a little recap here. So the 4 design challenges that I would love to gain traction and to actually get solved. And there's lots of work going on here, right? But we're really at the starting point of this organizational development movement that really focuses on purpose and self-organization. So we need lots more people to be involved in this, to come up with lots more solutions to really drive this. The challenge is purpose. If you ask me, purpose is primarily important to assess if it aligns with your personal values. Because how else can you make that assessment, right? How can you assess whether or not the company does what you value if the company doesn't say what it does? It's impossible. Challenge your company to tell you what it does, and then use the second design challenge, power dynamics, so that you can hold your company accountable. That if your company deviates from what it says purpose is, that you can hold it accountable, and that there's the power dynamics in play to readjust the company back to what it says it is. Or, you step out. That's another option, right? But hold your company accountable. Because that's often not the case. Often, many companies, they have a mission statement, but that's more marketing than actual. There's no way to make that actionable. Power needs to properly and drastically shift for that to become a tool in our organizations. Culture. So how do you separate personal needs from organizational needs? And I think culture is hugely important there. So how do you create, and then get into the last one, the design challenge around safety, so that you can question all your assumptions and bring all your vulnerabilities. So that you can have an open discussion, guys. I don't feel quite comfortable to bring this. And if you're not feeling comfortable to bring something, then start that discussion. I don't feel safe enough to share everything I have to share. Where's my little ticker? There. So what I want to do is I want to invite you guys, and if anything, take a moment and ask yourself, what are my values? And then if you've got a little bit of a list, and it doesn't need to be complete, doesn't need to be full, but what are your values? And then do you get to express them in your work? Yes? Awesome. Keep doing it. Partially? Awesome. How can you increase? No? Figure out how to make that better. Because if we create a world in which our organizations are a reflection of our collective values, then we by definition create organizations that contribute to the best world possible. And I think this is me. If you want to contact me, there's my LinkedIn. Those are my values. These are my professional purposes that I contribute to in different ways. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And if there are any questions, I'd love to hear.